Imagine being the most famous man in London. Every word you speak is quoted, every play you write is a masterpiece, and polite society begs for your presence at their dinner tables. You are at the absolute pinnacle of the world. Now imagine losing every single piece of that life in a matter of days. Stripped of your wealth, your family, your name, and your freedom, thrown into a freezing, damp prison cell to perform agonizing, hard labor. And why? Not for murder, not for treason, but for loving the wrong person and for refusing to apologize for who you were. This is the story of a genius who conquered the world with his brilliance, only to be destroyed by the very society that once applauded him. This is the tragic, magnificent, and entirely true story of Oscar Wilde, the man who lost everything for being himself. Long before the scandals, the trials, and the ruin, Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills. Wilde was a boy born in Dublin, Ireland, in 1854. From the very beginning, he was destined to be different. His mother was a fierce revolutionary poet who wrote under a pseudonym, and his father was a brilliant, eccentric surgeon. From them, he inherited a razor-sharp mind and a deeply rebellious spirit. When he eventually arrived at Oxford University, he didn't just study the ancient classics, he studied how to become a living icon. He grew his hair long, decorated his rooms with extravagant peacock feathers and blue china, and aggressively championed the philosophy of aestheticism. Art for art's sake. He claimed that life itself should be lived as a form of art. Naturally, the traditional stuffy students mocked him, but he didn't care. He already understood a fundamental truth of modern fame. He knew that the worst thing in the world is not being talked about. It is not being talked about at all. Moving to London, Wilde had transformed himself into a celebrity decades before the word even carried its modern meaning. He wore velvet jackets, silk knee breeches, and often walked down Piccadilly carrying a single sunflower or lily. When he sailed across the Atlantic to tour America, he reportedly told the strict customs officers in New York that he had nothing to declare but his genius. The press followed him everywhere, and soon, high society fell at his feet. He married a beautiful, intelligent, and wealthy woman named Constance Lloyd, had 2 sons, and settled into a life of absolute luxury in Chelsea. But it was his pen that elevated him from a mere celebrity to a god of literature. He wrote enchanting fairy tales for his children, brilliant philosophical essays, and then his only novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. It is the story of a terrifyingly beautiful young man who trades his soul to stay forever young, while his hidden portrait ages and bears the rotting scars of his secret sins. It was an undisputed masterpiece, but it terrified Victorian society. The book was completely full of secret desires, hinting at a shadowy, hidden life that polite society simply refused to acknowledge. The critics attacked him, calling the book immoral and filthy. Wilde, never one to back down, simply replied that there is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. By the early 1890s, Wilde was the undisputed king of the London stage. His comedic plays like Lady Windermere's Fan, An Ideal Husband, and his absolute masterpiece, The Importance of Being Earnest, were monumental, unprecedented hits. He exposed the absurd hypocrisy of the upper classes while somehow making them laugh at themselves. He was rich, adored, and felt entirely untouchable. But beneath the glittering, flawless surface of his very public life, Oscar Wilde was living a highly dangerous secret. He was actively exploring London's underground world, having discreet, passionate affairs with younger men. In the strict, intensely puritanical era of Queen Victoria, this was not just a social scandal, it was a severe criminal offense, punishable by prison. And then came the meeting that would seal his ultimate doom. In 1891, Wilde was introduced to Lord Alfred Douglas, known to his close friends as Bosie. Bosie was 21 years old, stunningly handsome, aristocratic, and completely reckless. Wilde was utterly captivated. It was the beginning of an obsessive, toxic, and all-consuming love affair. Bosie was incredibly demanding, prone to violent, screaming tantrums, and constantly drained Wilde's massive finances to pay for his gambling and extravagant lifestyle. But Wilde was blind to the danger. He was hopelessly in love. He wrote Bosie passionate, highly poetic letters that were meant only for a lover's eyes, but which would later be used as deadly weapons in a court of law. The true danger, however, did not come from Bosie himself, but from Bosie's father, the Marquis of Queensberry. The Marquis was a brutal, aggressive, deeply unpleasant man who hated his own son and was enraged by the very public rumors surrounding Wilde and Bosie. He made it his mission to destroy Oscar Wilde. The climax of this bitter, escalating feud happened when Queensberry left a calling card with the porter at Wilde's private club. On it, he scribbled a misspelled, highly insulting accusation. He openly and publicly called Wilde a sodomite. Here is where the brilliant genius made his fatal, tragic mistake. Urged on by a vindictive Bosie, who desperately wanted to see his terrible father humiliated in court, Wilde decided to sue the Marquis of Queensberry for criminal libel. It was an act of extreme arrogance and supreme overconfidence. Wilde truly believed his legendary wit could win any battle. He honestly thought he could stand in a courtroom, charm the jury, outsmart the lawyers, and walk away victorious. But the rigid British courtroom was not a theater stage. Queensberry's highly paid private detectives had relentlessly scoured London's dark underworld, finding young men, blackmailers, and sex workers willing to testify against Wilde. Faced with a sudden mountain of overwhelming, undeniable evidence of his own secret life, Wilde was forced to drop the libel case in humiliation. But the trap had already been sprung. As soon as Wilde dropped the case against Queensberry, the British government immediately turned around and issued a warrant for Oscar's arrest. His friends rushed to his hotel. They begged him to pack his bags and flee across the English Channel to France. There was a train waiting. He had time. The police were purposely giving him a window to escape. But Wilde simply sat in his hotel room, completely paralyzed by a mixture of deep exhaustion, stubborn pride, and perhaps a tragic theatrical sense of destiny. He refused to run away like a criminal. He waited. He was arrested, dragged to a police station, and formally charged with gross indecency. The subsequent trials became the greatest, most vicious scandal of the entire 19th century. The man, who had just been the absolute toast of London, was now the target of vicious, unrelenting public hatred. Crowds spat at him in the streets, but even then his brilliance shone through. During the final trial, when the aggressive prosecutor asked him to explain the phrase, "the love that dare not speak its name," Wilde stood tall and delivered one of the most eloquent, beautiful speeches in legal history. He passionately defended the pure, intellectual, and historical affection between older and younger men, comparing it to the love between David and Jonathan, or the philosophies of Plato. The public gallery was so moved they actually erupted in spontaneous applause. But beautiful words could not save him from a brutal law. On May 25, 1895, Oscar Wilde was found guilty. The judge, expressing pure disgust, sentenced him to 2 years of hard labor, the absolute maximum penalty allowed. The fall from grace was total and absolute. While he was locked away, his brilliant plays were abruptly closed. His books were completely withdrawn from shop windows. His beautiful home and all his possessions were publicly auctioned off to pay his massive legal debts. His heartbroken wife, Constance, was forced to change her last name and take their children away to Europe. He would never see his beloved sons again. In prison, Wilde was subjected to horrific, intentionally brutal conditions. He was forced to walk a mindless treadmill for hours and pick apart old, tarred ropes until his fingers literally bled. He suffered from severe dysentery, near starvation, and a devastating fall that permanently damaged his ear. The sparkling, joyful wit that had charmed the world was violently crushed under the terrible weight of solitary confinement and total silence. Yet even in the absolute darkest abyss of his cell in Reading jail, his genius miraculously survived. On the tiny sheets of paper he was allotted, he wrote a long, agonizingly beautiful, and deeply moving letter to Bosie, which is known today as De Profundis. In it, he meticulously dissected their deeply destructive relationship, but he also documented a profound, quiet spiritual awakening. He realized, through his tears, that sorrow is the ultimate truth of art. When Oscar Wilde was finally released from prison in May 1897, he was a completely broken man. His health was permanently ruined, and his bright spirit was shattered. He left England immediately on a night boat, knowing in his heart he could never return to the cold, unforgiving country that had destroyed him. For the next 3 years, he wandered aimlessly through France and Italy, living under the assumed tragic name Sebastian Melmoth. He briefly reunited with Bosie, much to the absolute horror of his remaining loyal friends, but the old magic was entirely gone. The harsh reality of their completely ruined lives poisoned the reunion, and they eventually parted ways forever. During his exile, he wrote his final masterpiece, a haunting poem called The Ballad of Reading Jail, exposing the horrifying brutality of the prison system. But his days of creating joyful art were completely over. He famously claimed that he had poured all his genius into his life and had only put his talent into his works. Wilde spent his final days in a cheap, run-down hotel in Paris, relying entirely on the small charity of a few loyal friends who had not abandoned him. He was physically deteriorating, but his legendary sense of humor flickered fiercely one last time. Lying in his dismal hotel bed, staring at the incredibly atrocious decor on the walls around him, he supposedly remarked, "My wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One or the other of us has to go." On November 30th, 1900, at the tragically young age of 46, Oscar Wilde died of meningitis. He was quietly buried in a modest grave outside Paris, a seemingly forgotten ruined exile. But history has a remarkable way of eventually correcting the arrogant mistakes of the present. Today, the rigid, cruel Victorian society that gleefully imprisoned him is remembered mostly for its suffocating hypocrisy. And Oscar Wilde, he is absolutely immortal. His plays are continuously performed in every language on earth, his brilliant quotes are universally known by millions, and his incredible courage in the face of brutal systemic persecution has made him a lasting symbol of freedom, love, and radical authenticity. He lost everything in his lifetime. Yes, he lost his beloved family, his immense wealth, his towering reputation, and his freedom. But in doing so, he gained eternity. He proved beyond any doubt that no society, no cruel law, and no dark prison can ever truly silence a beautiful mind. He was, to the very bitter end, entirely and unapologetically himself. Thank you for watching. If you found this tragic but beautiful story fascinating, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and join us next time as we continue to uncover the lives of the most mysterious and legendary figures in history. I will see you in the next video.